Dwight?
You know what? I haven't thought about that at all myself. No, I haven't thought about that at all. I'd have to ask Jameer. I don't know, but I haven't thought about that. I did read the article, but I hadn't thought about that.
Haven't you guys handled this thing about as well as could be expected?
I hope so. I mean, that's what you
When
hope to do
when
in
you
any
play-
situation. Yeah, I mean, I hope so. You know, I think everything's been good, and I think Dwight's played well and hard, and his attitude's been good. It's been team-oriented, and I think that's made it a lot easier for everybody.
Stan, you think Bill Prasky like times? Do you think Dwight will be here next year?
Oh, I don't have any idea. I don't. You know, that's not something that I spend any time thinking about at all.
Really, you don't think about that?
No, not at all. I mean, I would if it were the off season. I mean, when we get to the off season, if he doesn't get traded during the season, I'll probably think about it a lot as we go into the signing period. But no, I don't think about that at all. First of all, next year in the coaching profession, number one, is hardly a guaranteed thing, and we've got this year. That's what I'm interested
Okay, well,
in.
that's why you think he'll be here past the trade deadline.
I don't have any idea. I don't think about that either. I mean, it doesn't. I'm very bad about worrying about things, probably more than I should, but only about the things that I feel like I've got some control over. I mean, I've got some control over what our game plan is against Bryant, Gasol, and Bynum tonight. Now, I don't know if I have any control over whether we actually stop those guys, but I have some control over the game plan. So I'll obsess and worry about that stuff because I have something to do with it. As far as who's going to be here when after the trading deadline, I mean, I literally don't spend 1 second thinking about that.
What's Jay Rich's status, and has Glenn returned yet?
I have not seen Glenn yet. We knew it was going to be, close. I'm sure. I haven't gotten any word though that he was running late or wasn't going to be here. So I assume he'll be here. And Jay Rich is still on to play now. If he goes out there and starts going hard in pregame and finds out he can't, but right now I think he'll go.
Stan, Shaq sort of started the debate about Bynum versus Dwight the other night. Is there any question in your mind that Dwight's the best big man in the league?
Well, no, and I think that, I thought Andrew Bynum's comments were perfect, that, he's striving. Dwight's proven far more, I mean, he's done it for a longer period of time. Andrew's having a great year, playing extremely well, and he's a great player. But, you just, if you're taking people's body of work, no, I mean, I don't see how you could say that. Look, I mean, when you're on one of those shows, I don't care if it's, that show or PTI or whatever it is. I mean, number one, you're paid to give your opinion, and if your opinion is predictable and boring all the time, you're not going to have a job for very long. So I think I think most of what's said on those shows is, guys trying to get a reaction. I mean, how much longer are Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless going to go back and forth on Tim Tebow? I mean, it gets ridiculous, but it's what people want to hear, I guess, and so they do it. So I don't think you can take at face value even that on those shows that what people say, and I'm not just saying Shaq, and I'm not saying what they're saying is not true, but I don't think because they say it that you can take at face value that that's what they believe either. I mean, if you're just going to get on and everybody's going to say Dwight's the best center in the league, which I think most people believe, well, you don't have much interest there. But now when Shaq says it's not Dwight, it's Andrew Bynum, there's a lot of interest. I mean, Shaq's not a dumb guy now. I mean, he's created a lot of interest, and I would say if you're going to keep your job on those shows, people have to be interested in what you have to say, and so people were certainly interested in that. I think it's a smart professional move.
For the first time today, Dwight actually publicly fired back at him. Do you think he's kind of reached the end of his patience? Because he used to be pretty diplomatic about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that anybody's going to get tired of it over time. I think Dwight, even his comments today, the ones that I read, were pretty diplomatic. You know, but to me, I look at these comments differently than I look at the comments Shaq made when he was playing. To me, it's different. And the difference is, like I just said, I mean, you're sitting there on a show where your job is to create interest in what you say and to say something provocative. I mean, if you're going to get wrapped up in the things said on those shows, I mean, if I were Dwight, I'd be upset after all the things he said, but at the same time, I mean, like he's creating interest. I mean, that's what he's supposed to do. I mean, Charles says a lot of things that I think you have to take with a grain of salt, too. I think Charles has learned the art, though, of, or always had it, of, I know Charles has said things about me that have been less than complimentary, and when I've heard them, I've laughed. I mean, I think Charles has mastered that art. Nothing he says seems vindictive or small. You know, I mean, he says things, but there's a humorous edge to him, and I think Charles has seen, I'm just giving my opinion, no matter what he says, even if it's negative, I think Charles is just seen as a good guy. You know, he's a good guy. He's not out to hurt anybody, and so you've got to understand what those shows are. I mean, you know, I'll go in the locker room and PTI will be on, or, you know, I'll have whatever show that is, Skip Bayless is on, and they'll be yelling and screaming, and those shows are all the same. I mean, you have to say something controversial or nobody's ever going to turn you on, so. They're funny, but they're not credible. I mean, you know, you can't get wrapped up in what they say. I mean, does Skip Bayless really believe that he would take Tim Tebow in the fourth quarter over Tom Brady? I mean, that's what he said. Now, does he really believe that? No. But if everybody just says Tom Brady, it's boring. The one they're going to write about in the paper and everybody's going to pick up on is that you said you'd take Tim Tebow over Tom Brady. I mean, come on. You got to think those guys are thinking about that. What can I say that's going to, you know, get me to the forefront of what people are talking about?
I think Dwight and Andrew Bynum would kind of get more credit for being great centers historically if they were going up against more other great centers.
Well, I mean, maybe, but look, I mean, I think Andrew's got to do it for longer. And I read his comments. I thought they were right on the money and very mature comments from a very good player. He knows. I mean, it's got to be a longer body of work. And Dwight probably even needs a few more years. But look, to me, unless he got hurt tomorrow and never played again, and even then, I'm not sure it would deter me. Dwight's a Hall of Fame center. I mean, you know, I don't care. You just look at his numbers over 7+ years in the league. 3 straight times Defensive Player of the Year, you know, starting in the All-Star game every year, first team All-NBA. I mean, he's a Hall of Fame center already, and the things that he's done defensively and as a rebounder are right there with what anybody has ever done. So, you know, you can question the competition at that position in the time he's there, but it's hard. I would think it would be hard for anybody to question already that he's a historically great center. I mean, he deserves to be in the conversation with any of those guys, you know. Now, to be up in that league with, you know, Kareem, Wilt, Bill Russell, I don't want to leave anybody out, Hakeem, Patrick, those guys, he'd have to go more years. I mean, 7 years isn't going to put you in those guys' class. But just assuming that he goes along and keeps doing anywhere near what he's been doing, he's right, the Shaq would be in that group. But you've got to, you know, you've got to say that he's there. But he needs even more time. And Andrew certainly needs more time. He's only 24 years old. But those guys are great players, regardless. You know, I mean, let's say this too. Maybe the competition, maybe you don't think there's a lot of good centers, but also maybe it's that those guys are so good that some of those other guys don't look real good.
About Micah.
Well, I never saw George play. I didn't. I've seen film, old film. And he has to go down. He has to go down as one of the greats, though, because I think he sort of started, you know, he's the first great big guy. We had this conversation one time in Miami. I was just sitting around with some guys, and we were talking about guys, forget best players. Who are the guys that sort of changed the game, did something different. Mikan was one we had on our list. Bill Russell with his shot blocking. Wilt, because he was the first real oversized, unbelievably dominant guy. I think Shaq belongs in that with his combination of immense size and strength, and at least when he was younger, his ability, you know, to run the floor. Magic Johnson at 6'9", playing the point. You know, guys who just, not necessarily just where they were good. I'm not even sure Magic, though. We got in this conversation because Oscar was there before Magic, not quite as big, but big. You know, and so we got in this discussion of guys who really changed the game, and Mikan, I think, certainly is in that group. You know, and there's not that many. That's a smaller group than the great players. Like, to me, Jordan's not in that group. He's a great player, but he didn't change the game. I mean, you know, I think some of these other guys changed the game.
Stan, how can you say he didn't change the game when they changed the hand checking rules almost?
Yeah, but that's, you know what, they changed the lane for big guys and the whole thing. I'm just saying there were a lot of great wing players before Jordan came along, and he's a great player. I mean, again, I'm not taking anything away from him, but the rules have changed a lot of times, and the rules have changed since Jordan's gone out of the game. We've changed the defensive rules and everything else. I don't, you know what, I sit in there, I don't even know why they change the rules half the time. I don't think it's one guy, that's for sure. And I just, you know, I mean, people can disagree, but I think it's a great discussion to have, and I personally wouldn't put Michael Jordan or Kobe or those guys in that group. Now, are they among the greatest 5 or 6 players ever? Yes, absolutely. But that's a different group to me than what we're talking about. They just bettered. They just were better than other guys.
How about Irving?
Yeah, maybe. That's a good, somebody had him on the list, but then the argument came that he was just another version of Elgin Baylor, an improved version of, that it was really Elgin Baylor that started this sort of high-flying thing. So, I mean, you can go back and forth. It's a fun sort of discussion, though. And again, it doesn't, I don't think it belittles anybody. We're not talking who were the best players ever, just sort of guys that changed. Kuzi was on the list, the first great, you know, ball handler that was doing things other than a normal two-hand chest pass and everything else. I'm trying to think, but I remember, I mean, we were there for hours. It was one of those after-practice things and sitting there and arguing about guys. And we were trying to think of, you know, now it's sort of the guys like Ryan Anderson and guys like that, the foremen who can step out and shoot the three are fairly commonplace. And we were trying to go back and say, you know, who started all that? You know, when did that power forward position to a guy who would step out and shoot the three, when did that start? I don't remember what we came up with that. Rory? Maybe. I don't know. Could go back further. I don't know. I don't remember what we came up with. But, you know, those kind of things where you see trends in the game and where they started. It goes all the way back to Mike sort of jokingly adding George Mikan to the discussion of big guys. But George Mikan would be, I never saw him play, but he's got to be on that list.
Larry Bird.
Larry Bird, maybe. Yeah, well, we went back and forth on him. I mean, great player, again. And when you talk about those things, all the great players' names come up, but, you know, I don't know.
Should we grab some beers and have this conversation?
You know?
Great.
Yeah, we'll have a lot of time here during the season because we only play 5 times a week. So, yeah, we got a lot of nights off to do that. Maybe in the off season, Yow's you know, Yow was, I think our discussion was even pre-Yow, so, you know, but that would be interesting, you know.
Well, talking, yeah, you